I used to think letting go was something weak people did, like quitting, like giving up, like admitting defeat. Then I got older and realized the opposite is true. Letting go is one of the strongest things you can do because it requires you to stop feeding what's been feeding on you. Nobody teaches men how to let go. We're trained to hold on to control, hold on to pride, hold on to grudges, hold on to the image of being unbreakable. We call it strength, but sometimes it's just fear wearing armor. Around 50, the armor starts feeling heavy. You begin noticing what you're carrying, not in your hands, but in your body, in your shoulders, in your jaw, in your sleep. In that quiet tension you've normalized. And then a question shows up. What am I still holding that is no longer helping me? That question is the doorway. The first thing many of us have to let go of is perfection. Perfection is expensive. It costs time, joy, and connection. It creates a life where you're always fixing, always adjusting, always disappointed that reality isn't matching the picture. In your head, after 50, you start seeing how perfection damages love. You stop correcting people mid-sentence. You stop demanding the house feel like a magazine. You stop expecting your family to meet standards you don't even meet yourself. You choose peace over perfection. That's letting go. The second thing you learn to release is old roles. For years, you may have been the provider, the fixer, the strong one. Those roles can be honorable, but they can also become cages. They can become the reason you don't ask for help, the reason you don't rest, the reason you don't admit you're lonely. At 50, you begin to understand that your family doesn't need a superhero. They need a human, a steady human, a present human. So you let go of being impressive. You let go of the need to always have answers. You let go of the fear of being seen as imperfect. And when you do, something opens. Intimacy. The next thing you learn to let go of is resentment. Resentment is a slow poison. It keeps you connected to the past. It makes you replay old conversations and rebuild old arguments. It convinces you that you're protecting yourself when really you're keeping a wound alive. I had resentment for years towards someone who never apologized. I kept waiting for the apology. I kept imagining the moment they'd finally realize what they did. I thought that moment would free me. Then one day I realized waiting for their apology was the chain. Letting go didn't mean they were innocent. It meant I was finished paying. That's the difference. Forgiveness isn't saying what happened was okay. Forgiveness is saying, this pain will not run my life anymore. Another thing you learn to let go of is urgency. When you're younger, urgency feels responsible. You answer everything immediately. You react quickly, you stay plugged in, you make everything urgent to prove you're reliable. At 50, you start noticing that constant urgency is just anxiety with a schedule. So you practice a new kind of power, the pause. You pause before you respond, you pause before you agree, you pause before you react. That pause protects your relationships, it protects your nervous system, it protects your life. And then there's the hardest letting go. Letting go of the story you told yourself. The story that you had to earn love. The story that you were behind. The story that you were never enough. The story that if you rest, you'll become nothing. These stories are old. Some of them were handed to you when you were a child. Some of them were built from heartbreak. Some of them were built from comparison. But if you carry them into your 50s, they will keep stealing your peace. So you start telling yourself a truer story. A story that includes grace. A story that includes the fact that you survived. A story that includes the people you helped. A story that includes the quiet victories nobody clapped for. And that's when letting go becomes not a loss, but an upgrade. There's research showing that as people sense time more clearly, goals shift toward what feels emotionally meaningful. That's part of why letting go becomes easier later in life. The mind stops investing in what doesn't pay back. It starts investing in what brings calm, connection, and meaning. So how do you actually let go? Not with a speech, not with a dramatic declaration. You let go in small decisions. You unfollow the thing that makes you angry. You stop calling the person who drains you. You stop replaying the same argument in your head. You stop proving yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You clean one drawer, you take one walk, you say one honest sentence, you choose sleep over scrolling, and slowly your life becomes lighter. The world won't always reward you for letting go. Sometimes people will call you different. They'll say you changed. They'll act like your boundaries are an insult. That's normal, because when you let go of old patterns, you stop being predictable, and predictable people are easier to use. Letting go protects you from being used. It also protects you from using others, because you stop needing control, you stop needing dominance, you stop needing to win, you start needing peace. And peace is a kind of wealth if you're in this chapter of life. Here's the truth. The second half of your life is not for carrying the first half on your back. It's for releasing what no longer serves you. It's for living with a lighter spirit. It's for choosing a calmer legacy. So let go. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. Because you finally care about the life you have left. And that is the strongest reason of all. I'll tell you a small story. A few months ago, I opened an old box in the garage. The kind of box you don't open because you already know what's inside. Old letters, old photos, old objects tied to old versions of yourself. I sat on the floor and started pulling things out like evidence. I found a notebook from my 30s. The handwriting was tighter, more aggressive, like I was trying to control the page. Every entry sounded like a man arguing with life. Lists, plans, complaints, promises to push harder, promises to prove them wrong. I read a few pages and I felt a strange compassion, not pity, compassion. That man was carrying so much weight. He thought weight was maturity. He thought pressure was purpose. He thought exhaustion was the price of being worthy. And then I noticed something else. Almost every page was written for an audience that wasn't there, people I wanted to impress, people I wanted to silence, people I wanted to beat. I closed the notebook and laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was so human. Then I did something simple. I threw the notebook away, not because those years didn't matter. They mattered, they shaped me, but I didn't need to keep the artifact of my old war. That was letting go. And it didn't feel like loss, it felt like breathing. Here's what nobody tells you. Letting go is a practice, like training a muscle. First, the muscle shakes. You feel guilty. You second guess. You want to reach back and pick up what you dropped. Your mind says, what if you need it later? But most of what we hold isn't useful. It's familiar. We confuse familiar with safe. After 50, you start learning a new definition of safe. Safe is the relationship where you can be honest. Safe is the home where you can rest. Safe is the day that ends without you feeling depleted. Safe is the mind that isn't constantly on trial. And that kind of safety requires letting go. Sometimes the thing you let go of is a person. Not with hate, not with a speech, just with distance. You stop giving them the front row seat to your life. Sometimes it's a habit. The habit of checking, of worrying, of scanning for threats. The habit of reading bad news like it's a responsibility. The habit of arguing online with strangers. The habit of trying to fix the entire world before you fix your own heart. Sometimes it's a belief, if I'm not productive, I'm useless. That belief destroys men because it turns rest into shame. So you practice releasing it. You write the truth. You say it out loud. You repeat it until your body believes it. My worth is not my output. If you want a simple tool, here it is. Once a week, write one page answering 3 questions. What Am I holding that is heavy? Why am I holding it? What would my life look like if I set it down and keep it plain, keep it honest? Reflection isn't poetry, it's clarity. And clarity is what gives you the courage to release. Because the goal isn't to become careless. The goal is to become free. One day you'll look back and realize the most important things you let go of were never things. They were the invisible weights: fear of judgment, hunger for validation, the need to always be right, the habit of living tense. When those leave, you don't become empty. You become spacious. And in that space, life starts to feel like yours again. That's why letting go becomes the greatest skill you learn. Not because you stop caring, because you start caring about the right things. And that's what wisdom looks like in real life. A man who knows what to carry and what to drop.
If this reflection stayed with you, you're welcome to subscribe and continue the journey.